大家晚上好，欢迎来到今天的讲座。我是汇侨国际教育 iBridge Education 的创始人 Julia 老师。在我们的观众陆续进场的同时，我和大家介绍一下我们的团队。我们的团队总部位于纽约曼哈顿，在上海也设有办公室，专注于美国高中及本科的升学规划和辅导。我们的学员主要来自北美华裔家庭，同时也包括中国在内的海外家庭。我们的顾问团队实力雄厚，包括美国藤校的前招生官老师、全美顶尖的大学教授，以及领导力及公共演讲导师、专业写作导师等。我们坚持的呢是一个学生家庭配备一支专业导师团队，通过多维度的协作，为每位学员提供更系统、更深入的个性化支持。我们的团队核心团队包括升学顾问老师、双语进度管理老师、写作顾问、领导力与演讲老师等，以及招生委员会。此外，我们也会根据学生的需求匹配名校的教授、科研、学科辅导、标化考试辅导、艺术作品集导师以及体育特长导师等，提供全方面的支持。我们不仅关注申请结果，更注重学生的成长与突破。我们非常重视核心能力的培养，例如领导力、表达能力与项目执行能力，并通过有深度的科研、下校竞赛、实习和活动等路径，帮助学生不断取得进步。下面是我们部分导师的介绍。那由于时间关系，我们在这里不一一展开。大家可以看到，我们的顾问老师不仅毕业于北美顶尖院校，更拥有丰富的一线升学辅导经验，特别是在科研项目上，无论是人文、理工还是商科方向，我们都配备来自美国知名大学的教授进行指导，帮助学生建立真正的学术深度。那我们采用小而精的招生模式，每年严格控制人数，确保每个家庭都能获得充分的支持。在这里展示的呢是刚结束的2026年秋季入学的部分录取结果。我们的学员以前30大学录取为主，许多获得了前15大学，包括藤校的录取。在2022到2025这3个申请季 ，iBridge 的学员录取中有8个 Princeton 的 offer， 3个 MIT， 5个哈佛，3个 Stanford， 20个 UPenn offer 及其他顶尖大学录取 offer。接下来，我很高兴向大家介绍今天的主讲嘉宾Shawn老师。很多家长都想知道不同年级呢应该重点做什么，什么样的活动真正有价值。这些问题最适合有一位曾经亲自审核过成千上万份申请材料的招生官来分享。那Shawn老师呢是 iBridge 的资深升学顾问老师，他曾担任康奈尔大学本科招办主任以及 Virginia 大学招生助理院长，拥有超过20年的招生经验。那今天呢，Shawn老师将从招生官的视角出发，结合真实学生的案例，分享不同阶段的规划重点，以及如何逐渐建立一个有竞争力的申请画像。那今天参加我们讲座的许多观众是来自 Scarsdale 的家长，所以我们特意选择了我们来自 Scarsdale 一位学员的案例来分析。我们也征求到了孩子妈妈的同意，可以在讲座中提到孩子的名字 first name。再次感谢。在讲座中，我们的同事赵老师也将提供中文的简短总结，同时我们也安排了 Q&A 及 Q&A 问答环节，欢迎大家在 chat box 里面写下自己的问题，我们稍后会为大家解答。好的，那赵老师，我们可以开始了。
All right. Thank you so much, Julia, for all the introduction. Hi, Shawn. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to work with you hosting this webinar. I'm very excited. And because I personally have a 11th grade and I would like to find out more about, what he can do through this webinar. So I would like to start with a question. So, we all know that transcript, resumes, and recommendation letters, these are all important. Parents know, the students know. What are the other important aspects a ninth grader should be thinking about?
Great question. For ninth grade, students really should be building up their working on their soft skills, I would say, as well as working on the beginnings of their curriculum trajectory at their high school. So, in other words, what's really important is how challenging a schedule the student is able to manage in ninth grade relative to what's offered at the particular high school and the student's interests. And then also beginning to work on and develop the skills outside of and around the classroom that either are very important to a student and or that may be a part of that student's journey later on, plans for university later on. For an example would be music, for example, working on music, working on writing, sometimes just exposure to fields of study. So lots of different ways that a ninth grader can really sort of get started.
All right, I can briefly introduce, just translate into Chinese. I'll be very brief. 商老师刚才提到了学生要在课程中了解自己的兴趣和爱好，并且呢要在课外和课内都需要对自己的各方面的技能进行一个打磨，并且呢要了解到自己的热爱，尤其如果你对音乐感兴趣，那么在音乐方面要持续的进行一些探索。如果你自己对写作感兴趣，也同样在这个方面有一些探索。Shawn, I know the slides has some important points. Would you be able to talk a little about these important points?
Yes. So in terms of what admissions officers are looking for, and so we're moving ahead from ninth grade where you're sort of in the planning and the beginning stages of this and thinking about what you need to have sort of accomplished by the time you're submitting, I should say completing and submitting applications. It's good to sort of look ahead and think about what admissions officers might be looking for. And they're looking for, and they gather this information from the transcript, the essays, the recommendations, the resume, all the components of the application. What they're looking for, though, is to learn how well the applicant knows themselves. They want to see that the applicant has taken some risks and not always just done things the same way all the time, year after year. Admissions officers are looking to see, if the applicant is thinking critically about a lot of different issues, not just what they want to major in university, but are they connecting different sort of conversations and current events with what they're doing in the classroom. And there are ways to sort of understand and learn more about that. Whether or not applicants are comfortable being uncomfortable. When you go to university, it's very different than what everything and anything you've ever known before. And so being able to walk into a space that is brand new and to sort of survive that space is a very important skill that, students in high school can, and even earlier, can sort of provide evidence that they have experience with those kinds of situations. This will give admissions officers a bit more comfort. Recovering from setbacks and failures, no one's perfect and we all make mistakes, and being able to sort of rise above those and to continue on your journey, being self-directed, having a sort of mindfulness and a concern for yourself, but also a concern for others. And so these are all, I would say soft sort of skills, but really sort of developmental milestones that are very important to admissions officers.
Thank you, Shawn. I'm gonna brief summarize it. 那我们的家长可以从我们的这个我们的展示上可以看到，Shawn老师刚才提到了很多有趣的，但也非常重要的一些软实力，比如说自我认识、勇于冒险、批判性思维并且坦然面对不适，并且呢接受自己的一些失败，这些其实都是非常重要的。一会儿呢，我会让Shawn老师给我们进行更多的、更深层次的解析。 So Shawn, I know most of the those ninth graders, when they become teenager, they hardly talk to their parents or not even teachers, but I think they, in their mind, they constantly have a lot of conversation, questions for themselves. What do you think some of the questions they should be asking themselves? Sometimes I think they have too many questions and their questions are very messy in their mind. Maybe you can direct them for some like really important questions they can ask themselves, so to have a clear path. What are some of your suggestions?
Yeah, the questions that students will sometimes maybe keep to themselves or even ask their friends or compare themselves to their friends about might include, how strong am I? The student might be asking this question. How strong am I compared to the other students in my class, the top students in my class, or the students that that are most like me in the class, who want to study what I want to study or have my interests. So how strong am I? And uh, what test score, I think, how high of a test score do I really need? I think that might be a question that a student might have, and they might sort of get answers to these questions, by the way, on their own. It's not surprising that young people don't talk to their parents as much as they might sort of, talk amongst those at their age group. But other questions might be, is what I want to do a good fit for me? Does this make sense for me? I think sometimes young people worry about evaluation by their parents. And so, asking a friend or even just kind of doing an assessment, self-assessment is, as you're noted, is quite popular, but sometimes we tell ourselves, we keep sort of giving ourselves misinformation if we're just focusing on assessment from self. But, am I strong enough? And, what do I need to work on? I think most students don't want to disappoint their parents, and they don't want to ask their parents if they're working hard enough or if they're doing as much as they could be. And so they may actually, again, sort of go through this process, this act of comparing themselves to others, perhaps even siblings, actually, brothers and sisters, instead of perhaps asking an adult or a parent or even a teacher or advisor. So, I would say that it's good to sort of get students in the habit of thinking about this sort of thing early on, but also we have to sort of open the doors and get them asking questions of parents and of adults, who can guide them early on about, right, are these the right classes? And when should I start preparing for the SAT? And, should I do a summer camp in the summer after ninth grade? And if so, what should be the topic or theme? So yeah, those are some of the questions, and we definitely have to get students asking those, not just of themselves, but of others sooner.
All right. 尚老师刚才分享，那我们一个9年级的孩子，的头脑里肯定会有很多各种各样的问题，他们可能很多时候在做一些自我的评价，虽然可能不一定跟父母分享很多，但是他们其实也需要认认真真问自己，我现在在我的班级里或者整个年级里处于一个什么样的一个位置，我什么时候去考这些考试，同时呢，在进行这些问题回答的时候，真的也要去寻找家长和其他的 mentor 的导师的这样子的一些帮助，去帮助他们走上一条相对来说不要走特别多的弯路。上 So when you prepare this slides for us, you also listed all these questions that seems to be big. When do you think they should be asking these questions? As a ninth grader, is it too early to ask?
Actually, no. And some of these questions some of these questions may be too early for ninth grade, but these are definitely questions that students should be thinking about by the time they are preparing applications for admissions officers. So ninth grade, you're not really doing anything specifically for the admissions officer. You're doing things to develop yourself as a student, as a person who is, who has depth in intercultural communication and who understands global perspectives and has a sort of broad-mindedness, a kind of a multicultural sort of perspective and sort of sense of things. By the time you're applying, that's when the questions that are here, who are you, what matters to you, need to really kind of come out of the writing, come out of the recommendations, come out of the resume. Students don't think that resumes matter, but they do. It's another chance for you, the student, to insert your voice into this process. The choices you make with the resume matter as much as the choices you make with the essay. What are your hopes and dreams? What problems do you want to solve? These are sometimes questions that can be answered simply with a resume, also with an essay, and certainly through recommendations and other ways. How will you change the world and make it better? So these are definitely questions. I call these the other questions. These are questions that students want to answer when they're actually writing their responses for the prompts that universities provide and/or their personal statement. The universities don't ask these specific questions, but if you were to enter into an admissions consideration space or room, these are the questions at the end of the day that allow applicants to rise to the top or to kind of sink and become again a part of the crowd.
All right, thank you. That was a lot of information. 我给大家说几点我刚才听到的非常重要的。虽然在我们的这个展示的时候，这上边有一些很大的问题，但是尚老师说，可能9年级的孩子们还想不到这些问题，但是随着他们的成长，这些大的问题其实是应该在他们脑子里，包括在家长的包括他们的导师的指导下，慢慢的要去逐渐去回答出来了。而且我觉得尚老师刚才提到的一件事情就是，虽然9年级只是刚刚自我成长开始发展的一个最初的阶段，但实际上你自己的简历开始慢慢形成一个自己的风格、独特风格的这样的一个简历，和你以后的文书实际上是同样重要的。那一会儿我们也有具体的来跟大家分享。同时呢，其实他从一个招生官的这样的一个角度来说，他说，虽然我们在回答这些文书问题的时候，其实是这些问题是没有。他的问题不是问的这样我们面前的这5个问题，但是实际上你回答的都是这5个问题。如果你能把这5个问题再通过你的文书，通过你的简历，通过你各种回答，包括这个 college specific 这些 essay 里边都回答出来，其实就已经达到了这些招生官们他能看到一个真实的一个学员 ，OK applicants OK。Thank you very much, Shawn. So yeah. I do have, as a parent, I do have a few questions. When you mention, a few words like risk-taking, comfort with being uncomfortable, those when I was reviewing the slides, I was like, what does that mean? When you say comfort with being discomfort. So iBridge Education, we actually prepared a few real successful applicants, and I think you probably also did a lot of review for their profile. So we listed 3 students, all their profile from 9th grade up to 11th grade. So I would like you to take a look, and based on a lot of points you have mentioned, can you pick something really important you have seen and what they have done that really catches your eyes as a admission officer?
Yes.
So this is student A. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, this is student A. And we can see their brief SAT score and their GPA. Okay,
Yep.
and the rest. Go ahead, you take a look.
Okay.
We kind of color coded for you, so
Yeah,
it's a
and
little easier. Mhm.
and one thing I'll mention too that may be helpful in terms of understanding what is meant by risk taking
Mm,
and what is meant by being comfortable with or being comfortable being uncomfortable.
mm,
Think of the word challenge or think of
mm,
challenges. And then think of these two ways that all of us get challenged. There's challenge by choice and challenge by chance. And students that are challenging themselves by choice, that is risk taking.
mm.
Students that are challenging themselves by choice, that is deciding to enter into a space that is unfamiliar, where you're not already an expert, and relying on what you know, what the student knows, and what the student knows they can do in order to succeed.
Okay.
Challenge by choice. That is risk taking. So now,
Okay.
student L has done some of that actually. A lot of that actually. So student L has a strong academic performance and has rigorous courses under their belt, advanced coursework at their school, and has done research with a Yale professor. The student did not have to do that. That's an
Mm,
example of challenge by choice. And again, practicing risk taking does need to start early. You can't all of a sudden want to sort of get all of your challenging, do it all in 11th grade. You really have to practice because, there is a kind of method to this that you will develop and evolve. And, once you've conquered certain things, you should move on and conquer other challenges by choice. So this idea of risk taking and really sort of moving yourself developmentally along your particular pathway, it starts someplace, but it really doesn't have an end point unless you choose for it to end. And so, universities want to see students like student L here, this case, doing the John Locke, competition and doing Iowa Young Writers. Those are indicators that this person is someone who is gifted perhaps in the humanities, writing Topia Writing Awards. So awards also help to really kind of increase the understanding of the gifts and strengths of a particular candidate, in this case, student L. And then the green looks to be activities and involvements, and those are important because you can't, just show up as someone who's book smart. I think in our real lives, you might hear people say there's book smarts and there's street smarts, maybe beyond the book. And so the volunteering here is beyond the classroom. It's beyond, the coursework at the school, beyond the homework, the civic summer program, and doing the district attorney office internship. Those are spaces, by the way, volunteering with children with autism. Those are spaces that most young people are not going to be familiar with. Challenge by choice, risk taking. Working in a district attorney's office. I don't know of many high schoolers that even know what a district attorney's office is like, what goes on there. So again, challenge by choice, doing things that are unfamiliar to learn and to grow, not knowing what the end point is going to be, not knowing what the outcome is going to be. The outcome is that you have a new experience, you learn new things that you weren't expecting to learn. You didn't already know how it was going to go. And that sort of builds a foundation within students that allows them to continue doing this thing that, risk taking or challenge by choice, for the rest of their lives, honestly, which is why you want to practice starting in ninth grade. And this student absolutely has done that. Clarinet performance competitions, Juilliard pre-college. Juilliard is one of the most challenging music conservatories in the world. And to do the pre-college program there, which is for high school students, it's very competitive. It's very serious. It's also a risk too. Performance is a risk. And this student has shown that this is going to be a part of, and it is already is a part of who they're becoming.
Mhm. All right, thank you. A lot of great point. I know this is an excellent student, beyond excellent students, and
Yes.
many of our Scarsdale, audience probably already know our beloved applicant and Lincoln, who actually did all these work. 刚才尚老师提到了Lincoln 在9年级到11年级。大家可以看到他的 profile 的一步一步的深化，尤其到11年级做的在人文方面的与 Yale Law Professor 做的这样子一些研究，包括从很早的时候就关注做一些非盈利的，关注这些有一些缺陷的这些孩子。然后到最后可以为他们做很多的公益活动，包括自己参加这个 pre-college 这个单簧管的一些比赛和表演到在茱莉亚的这个 pre-college music school， 所有的这样子横向一比较，你就可以看到出来他的活动的越来越深入。这个呢，我也请大家我也邀请观众来猜一猜，我们的 Lincoln 最后看到他的 profile， 你觉得他最后的录取的结果大概是什么？那我再给大家分享一下尚老师刚才提到的一些我觉得非常重要的一点，就是 challenge by choice， 是自己去选择接受这样的一个挑战。它很多的活动可以体现出这样一点而且呢是进入了一个新的一个经历，这个经历其实是你是不知道结果的，所以这一点是特别重要。很多我们的大家的考试，其实我们最终知道结果，但所有的这一些活动，其实你是不知道结果的。那我们要不要揭晓 Lincoln 的这个最终的录取？当当当 drum roll. Okay, so he was admitted, of course. Shawn, did you see a Harvard, ED student here as a former professor, admission officer, by just reading his profile?
What's interesting is Harvard is a place that, like the other Ivies, it's hard to predict in advance what they will do in a given year. But I do believe that Lincoln's level of achievement was very desirable, very appealing, appetizing, just because he was so smart and so interesting in ways that were uniquely his own. That couldn't be stressed enough, that this process of looking for students by the top universities is very individualized, and it's very important, once again, for students to start the process of discovering themselves as early as possible, so that by the time they're like Lincoln and they're applying to schools, they can communicate what they know, all that they know about themselves when they're applying. That's what makes a place like Harvard want a particular student.
那我想说的就是尚老师说，如果你自己的孩子或你自己今天如果过来听，你自己觉得你自己是这样的非常独一无二的，对各种对你自己的学业还是影响力都有非常大的这样子的希望能进入这样的好的学校，那你真的从9年级甚至更早一些就可以开始进入一些准备活动这样子你就在12年级的时候真正可以看到自己的结果。当然 this is only one step of their life, I believe. Yeah. Shawn,
That's right.
Thank you so much. That was a very thorough analysis. We have 2 more cases. Would you like, they might be slightly different. Okay. This is case number 2, student Z. SAT 1590. Wow, very, very high. Definitely strong academically. GPA 3.94. All right. So take a look, and if you can give us some points to take away from this student's profile.
Sure. And with the last student and with this student, you'll notice off to the left that, both students have very strong SAT scores and very strong grades, strong GPAs, grade point averages. And I like to remind students and families that this is just the test score and the grades and the rigorous course selection is really just the beginning. Most important of those three, assuming that test scores are strong and grades are strong, is the course selection. And so in yellow here, you can see the curriculum at this school is advanced placement, and there's a strong STEM foundation here that's been established for this student. And then, of course, that sort of leads into the activities and involvement and engagement beyond the classroom in things, competitions, and sort of moments of examination, like the AIME qualifier and being a part of Math League. I did Math League, and Math League is about competing with your teammates and also with other schools. You can see that math is quite prominent for this student, who is, if memory serves, a pianist and a runner. Um, and so it makes sense that because there's a connection between music and math, New Jersey Math League competitor, president of the Math League Club. So, leadership, I didn't mention this before, but I did write it down, and I wanted to mention that one of the sort of byproducts of risk taking, which is again by definition a challenge by choice, is that you develop your skill set to lead yourself so that you can lead others. So you're becoming a leader when you're taking risks, when you're challenging yourself by choice. And you can see that in this student's profile, that leadership is becoming more sort of, it's becoming more sort of prevalent as time goes on. The level of leadership is increasing as well over ninth grade through 11th grade onto the application. And then continuing on, you see the cross country that I mentioned. So we have a pianist and a runner who is at the top of the game, is captain of the cross country team, along with being president of the Math League. The student also did a summer session focused on mathematics. Before that, the student did a math summer program. And even before that, the student was heavily involved in math competitions, AIME. And so there is kind of a sort of deepening of the student's abilities in math. There is a signal that the student loves mathematics and is very strong in this area. And of course, the universities would connect that back to the coursework, the GPA, and the test scores. So great student.
I also actually noticed, this kid around ninth grade, he is doing a lot, right? And he's doing, he's a runner, we can tell. But everything seems to be all scattered, like individual, like separated. There's no like combining anything together or coherent, but by 11th grade, I see a lot of activity are being elevated in a way. He would use certain skills and to do some leadership activity. Did you notice that?
Yeah. And I just mentioned that too. I mean, that's what's happening. There's this sort of transformation that's happening from ninth grade to 11th grade in terms of the amount of leadership the student is taking on. So the student is taking more risk over time. You have to develop your, you have to develop your constitution in a way in order to be able to take on these higher level roles. I mean, no one expects a ninth grader to be the president of the math team, just like no one expects a ninth grader to be doing the U Chicago summer session. Just like, unless you're a prodigy or a savant. And I would actually say these students that we're talking about today they're quite brilliant, all three of them. The other thing I want to mention too, though, is this student conducted research. And research is so important to consider doing as we're talking about growing from ninth grade to 10th grade to 11th grade to 12th grade. Doing research is a part of that growth, is a part of looking at what is my trajectory, what do I want to major in, what do I want to study. I believe the student was looking at math as a major, is that right? Okay, and so
Yeah.
doing some research related to STEM is really important, especially for, the kinds of universities that our students are looking at, the top universities. And the student not only did one sort of research thing, but really it looks like there are a couple of things that happened. And related to math, which is great. That's the area of interest. It just gives the student more depth and makes them more interesting to the admissions committee.
Thank you. Yeah, he did like a research under iBridge research professor, also published and presented. That's actually a great achievement at the 11th grade.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah. I will briefly summarize for everyone. 刚才尚老师今天对这位学生的分析主要基于他的这个领导力。那他提到一个观点，我觉得特别重要，就是说大家在敢于冒险的时候，实际上你在发展自己的这个非常重要的一些技能。那而这些技能，如果你能在自己的身上去实现、去练习，其实最终呢就有可能去成为一位领导者。那这位学生呢，大家可以看到他的数学从最开始只是简单的参赛，到最后呢可以做一些关于数学方面的研究。那你可以看到他步步深入，而且呢他运用自己的这样的 piano 的这样的一个技能音乐人的技能，同时呢用它来做自己的一些的领导力的活动参与社区的一些活动。那同时呢也在自己的这个athletic cross country track athlete 方面也持续的进行更深入的在这方面的一些发展。Okay, thank you very much. Leadership we know is so important, and thank you for mentioning that. So does everyone want to guess who the students actually got enrolled? I don't know. I can see the chat very easily, but here is the result. Yeah, ED, Cornell, math, computer science, of course, and environmental science. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to move on to our third case study.
Yeah.
Student T, SAT 1580. I think the school doesn't share GPA, probably. It's okay. We know probably very high.
Yeah, and this is an IB student, and so really what matters most, there are progress grades for IB students here in the US and for a lot of places too. Progress grades out of 7 that students might be getting in the courses they're taking, their pre-IBs, their SLs, standard level and higher level courses later on. But most important is going to be their predicted score and the results of all of their IB exams. So, that score that they get out of 45, which is how IB works. But this student is very strong and does go to a very, I think, a particularly interesting school. And you'll notice here, this is great. I talk about this a lot. This school is interesting to me because this student did do something that isn't available at a lot of schools, or at least a lot of students aren't doing, which is mixing curriculum options together. Some schools allow this because they offer AP, advanced placement, they offer IB. And so some schools will allow this commingling of the curriculums, which is actually good for students because, after BC Calculus happens, what do? Well, this student took BC Calculus in 10th grade, and what they did was went on to do IB higher level, or in this case, they could have done that. And in this case, they went on to multivariable calculus, but sort of mixing the curriculum so that you get what it is you need relative to your strengths as a student. The student, and like the others, I did want to mention this too, all 3 of these students are equally strong across all subjects. They're not, there used to be a word we used, pointed, too pointed. They understand that universities care that you are as strong in language and literature, you know, as much as you might be in your sort of more favorite STEM courses. But this student has a very, very, I think, like the other two, a very good sort of curriculum as a foundation, strong performance in humanities and STEM classes, absolutely. And then looking at this next section, sort of going from 9th grade to 11th grade, and one thing that we should probably mention, we sort of talked about this a little bit, but there's not a sort of very obvious linearity about what's happening with students. This is about the risk taking. This is about the organic nature of things. These individuals are just that. They're becoming individuals. They're making choices. Students are changing between 9th and 10th and 11th grade. And what we have to do as educators and parents and supporters is help students sort of, get deeper in the things that interest them, as they're changing and evolving. And so that's why there's not always this linearity about what students are doing. They're not always just doing the same thing. They are sort of doing harder versions of similar things is a great way to think about it. But I think it's interesting here. We've got a student who's doing math club and doing AIME, but is also a writing contest winner. And so, so that the sort of diversity that already exists within so many students, and that is certainly, engaged in the high school academic environment is really appreciated amongst the kinds of top level universities that students are looking at. This student has a particular gift with mathematics, again, competitive math club leader by 11th grade. So getting to a point where leadership is possible in an area that matters to the student. What matters to you? Who are you? Those questions that I mentioned earlier. Admissions officers will think about those questions, maybe without even thinking about the actual question, and see who this person is, who they were, and who they are becoming. The music piece is also makes perfect sense, especially with the strong performance in the humanities, connected with the writing contest and the summer academy for writing. So there are lots of things you can do, again, outside of the classroom, outside of your school even, that help the student to develop as an individual, that helps the student develop their skills, their particular talents, on the way to creating that unique story that belongs only to that student. That story is the one you want to be able to write about in the personal statement. The last student, I meant to mention this, did an amazing job of writing a personal statement that was about who they are, the runner, the pianist. One of the more interesting personal statements I think that I've actually read. And you could tell it was his very own, and it belonged to him. That's what universities are looking for. They're not looking for big words. They're not looking for carbon copies. They're not looking for the same person, student after student. And it's really important to remember that. And these three students that we're looking at, each of them, while there is similarities across all three of them, they each have a very unique story about how they get from 8th grade, how they got to 12th grade and to applying to university. Music, very big here. Chess club, chess and math, those things sort of connect. Research again, Cambridge Future Scholars, another research program, Yale Young Global Scholars, really sort of an opportunity to develop one's communication skills and engaging across difference and analyzing problems and ideas, that are important to the world today. So really a very, very wonderful profile here that yes, from 9th grade to 11th grade, it truly does grow and expand in all the ways we've been talking about.
Thank you. Oh, these were a lot of good points. 那我给大家简单总结一下我认为比较重要的几点。第一点呢，就是如果你的孩子在一个学校里有可能会选到 IB 这样的 curriculum 的话， 也有机会选到 AP 课程的话，那你一定要利用这样的一个优势，因为 admission officer 希望能看到，在你选完 AB 的课程之后，还去有机会去选择其他更有趣的跟 AP 课程不太一样的一些课程。那么这位同学呢，在这个 academic 方面做到了这一点。那同时尚老师刚才还提到了，其实我们的这个 profile 它不是一个直线式的，而是自然发生了，而且在这个自然发生的程度这个过程中，其实你可以看到它的活动是一步一步的深入，并且有延展性。那在这个里面老师刚才提到了它的化学科的能力是特别重要，除了数学之外，大家可以看到它的人文包括写作也是特别的出色，在这个方面也持续的在进步。那同时在音乐方面也有持续的发展也就是说，实际上我们可以看到它最终可以它的整个的从9年级到11年级是有一个非常独一无二的这样的一个故事。最终在他想申请的时候可以把它讲出来这个是我们每个人我们今天分享的3个例子中，每个人他们的虽然有很多的相似点，但实际上每个人都有一个独特的一个故事去讲给admission officer 听。Okay, thank you so much. Anybody wants to guess where did the student go? He was actually got into multiple schools, and eventually he made a decision to go to Northwestern. I think it's a great choice, yeah, with his strong cross curriculum, across subjects strength, right?
Yes, and I should probably clarify. So many high schools offer multiple curriculum, and so students can sort of sometimes choose between both curriculums to satisfy the degree requirements if it's the International Baccalaureate's diploma program, or if you're doing an AP sort of the AP high school diploma. Some students again can take IB courses, and it doesn't change the fact that they've completed advanced level work for AP or IB, stepping out and taking other classes. This is actually what happens during the summer when students take classes at universities and in the US and around the world. They're sort of moving themselves forward. It is risk-taking to do that because you're doing something that maybe some would say you're not supposed to do, or that's different from what you have been doing. That builds you up as a person, as a learner, certainly as someone who is going to be leading again themselves in order to be able to learn to lead others. So,
thank you. 如果大家有这样的机会，比如说利用暑假的期间，可以去看看有没有机会选择其他的这样的一些课程将教室放到我们世界中所有的地方都可以去选课。Thank you so much, Shawn. So
yeah.
This gonna get a little bit personal. I have 11th grade. All we talk about is from 9th grader to 11th grade. So I have a 11th grade boy. What do you think he can do during summer? The summer is coming. He was actually pretty upset one day, regretting that he didn't do much in 9th grade and 10th grade, spending a lot of time on the games. That's what most of the boys would do. He's actually thinking about seriously, what he can do. He's been involved in robotics for a few years. What would you recommend as a 11th grade, and any other general, advice for students who are rising seniors and approaching to the critical time? What are some advice you can give to the parents?
Yeah, I do think that, thinking about the summer before year 12 is sort of the last summer, and significant, demonstrative things can happen for students during those summers. We don't all grow at the same rate over the same period of time. And so some students really come into themselves even later. And so that's why it can sometimes feel challenging if you're trying to get a ninth grader to do, and they just don't seem to be quite ready or quite interested. It may be that they're going to blossom later on, and that's fine. The summer before year 12 really should be used, I think, to connect the student with the programs and the universities to which they will be applying. Authentic connection to program and institution is highly important. And the summer before year 12, when as we saw with some of the students we just talked about, students were doing research that summer. That's a good moment to be doing some research or writing, writing papers if you're a humanities person, creating websites, blogs. There are so many different things. Taking courses at universities. I mean, that's another sort of opportunity for you to step out of your comfort zone, your high school, and into a university classroom, whether that's in person or virtually, and to sort of compete and learn and challenge yourself, be analytical at a higher level in a different way with different people than you normally are sitting in class with. So independent study is also something that happens a lot. You mentioned video games and STEM. I oftentimes will ask students who have STEM interests, especially gaming and CS related interests, what computer languages do you know? And have you learned other languages? Have you advanced that particular skill set in ways that you could? There are MOOCs, Coursera exists. There are lots of different ways that you can do more, even when you've done the most. During that summer, especially before year 12, I think it's the last moment for you to show, and to maybe even get yourself as ready as possible for year 12 and for what's going to come after year 12. And so working with tutors to prepare portfolios. I mean, there's so many different things that you definitely could be doing and working on. Sometimes having a job and internships for students that have business interests, research may not make sense for that kind of student, but having spent some time understanding what is venture capital, what is banking, what is finance, those kinds of things, internships, very important. And we saw earlier a student who did time within an attorney's general's office or DA office, and I believe that opportunity was provided and supported through iBridge, through the organization. But the student having that experience, especially if they're interested in law, doing an internship, that can matter a whole lot, not because it's something substantial for the resume, but because, as I tell students, shadowing and internships can be any length of time. These give you a new perspective, new information, and something that you can write about because you've seen it, you've seen some parts of it for yourself. You now have new knowledge and new perspective to share on an area that's of interest to you. And so the writing that students do in the application can benefit from those activities that might be happening, as late as the summer, right before year 12.
So thank you. All I hear is do not give up. You still have time, right?
Absolutely. Do not give up. There's plenty of time. Those summers can count. The school years can count. The weekends can count. Students that have interest, in certain creative areas might be able to do weekend programs during the academic year. It's really never too late to really to try and connect yourself more closely, more specifically, and more authentically with what it is you want to study. And this will actually make a difference to the institution that you're applying to.
All right, thank you. 简单的，最简单的，因为时间关系，就是我们如果你有11年级的，马上要进入senior year的家长们不要放弃这个暑假，可以尽量的去让孩子做，根据自己的兴趣做永远不会 晚的，要做到最后一刻，也是有可能帮助到他最后的这个整个申请的，不管是研究写作，还是去实习，还是去见习，包括独立的研究，在自己有兴趣的方面去甚至去做别人的一些辅导啊，线上线下去参加各种各样的这个学校的一些活动，包括summer camp，都是对自己的整个申请还是会非常有帮助的不要放弃，还是有时间。Thank you so much, Shawn. I know we're to how's our time? Are we doing okay?
Yeah,
So I think we have just a little more. So Shawn, we know all these high achievers, they know like they want to be competitive. I hate to say like, am I doing enough? They probably keep asking themselves this question. I would like to phrase it like, how can they feel like they are doing something more meaningful? A lot of things they're doing they're forced to do. They know they're obligated to do. They know it's important to get and try their best. But what are something they can think of or do, or what would you suggest they feel like meaningful to them and to the world?
Well, and that's really just it. There's not some things that everyone can do and sort of see the same result or success. You have to be competitive first, and being competitive is just as you described. It's doing the things that students know their parents expect of them, their schools expect of them, they expect of themselves, taking strong classes, being involved outside of their classroom, having a good SAT score, taking coursework that's related to their, making sure they're taking rigorous coursework at their high school related to their areas of strength and interest, while also taking rigorous coursework across all subjects. And doing programs that allow them to grow. So, a lot of students playing instruments, being, studying art, being involved in athletics, those kinds of things. Being a part of the Dungeons and Dragons Club at your school if you're interested in gaming and that sort of thing. So yeah, those are all the things that you do to be competitive. And I think of being competitive as just it's merely standing up. And I think most students are doing this much. The competitive part is really, it's about showing that you're a fit and a match with the program, with the kind of institution, and it's just you showcasing yourself. So in some ways, it's the new normal to be a student that is seen as excelling in all that they're doing. And then beyond that, this is the answer to your question, actually. What more can someone do? Beyond being competitive, you must be compelling. You must be memorable. You must be, in some ways, unforgettable or unique in a way that suits you, that captures the attention, imagination, and interest of the admissions officer. And in one example of that, we've actually seen when I see students taking both advanced placement and international baccalaureate courses at their high school, I think first, what are they doing? And then I think, as an admissions officer, I think, what are they doing? And then why are they doing it? If you make an admissions officer ask questions and sort of stop in their tracks, you're probably hopefully, you're doing something right. So again, the interdisciplinarity, being strong across the board, taking classes that, again, are not, AP, doing something different, doing something during the summer, taking a class at a university, virtually or in person. That's really important. That's going to get someone's attention. This person's really interested. They're working and learning beyond the capacity provided by their high school. Same thing with involvement and activities. A lot of students go to high schools that offer lots of clubs and organizations. Not every student, though. And ideally, what you're doing if you're a risk taker and you're challenging yourself by choice, you're thinking, well, what else can I do? I don't have to do everything at my high school. My high school may not offer everything. So what is there in the community? What is there available nationally? You know, you can do Iowa Young Writers and you don't actually even have to go to Iowa. So there are lots of ways to sort of, again, sort of rise to that next level of being compelling. The writing you do in the application, that makes you compelling if it's, sort of like the writing that our student B that David did, for example. Um, so yeah, those are some of the ways. There are lots of ways. I mean, I could talk about this particular slide all evening. Empathy, emotional intelligence, critical thinking. There's so many different ways to be compelling, to be memorable, and to exhibit, to show this, not to just tell us, but to show us this in the admissions application for the admissions officer to sort of to pick up on.
Thank you. 尚老师，我最后再给大家总结一下，我们尚老师有一个提出来的一个 being competitive 有竞争力这个是大多数学生都在尽力去做到的，但是如何做到能让admission officer 记住你，想更多的了解你，那么这个是大家可能在课堂之外，甚至在学校之外要尽力去能做到的。比如说跨学科的全面的实力，突出领导力通过个人网站研究、论文集、作品集有这样个人全面发展这样的能力和共情的能力这些方面，如果你能尽量去做到，那就是真的可以让这个 admission officer 真的能把你记住，而且不停的问你为什么你会做这样的事情会让他更加好奇的去更多的了解你。这也是我们最终的希望能给大家家长的一个很好的一个 being competitive and being compelling 这样的一个概念。Thank you so much, Shawn. I know our time is very limited. You could talk about a lot more. Julia, would you like to see if parents might have some questions? You want to take over?
I see a few questions, but we will wait a few more questions and we're going to answer them together. 已经有1、2个家长提出了非常好的问题我们马上会集中起来一起回答，也欢迎其他的观众能够把想问的问题打在 chat box 里面，那我会大概花1到2分钟时间呢，来等待搜集大家问题的同时，我也来介绍一下我们近期推出的暑期项目。首先呢，我们为即将进入申请季的学生推出了文书指导的项目，服务呢将重点的围绕 Common App 主文书、学校的补充文书进行支持，包括文书主题的 brainstorming 文书策略的把握以及深度的修改及提升。那我们不仅指导是写完文书而且是通过文书非常好的展现自己的个性、思考和成长。那我们的服务呢，将由我们 iBridge 资深写作导师与顾问们共同支持，确保文书内容与整体的申请方向保持一致。如果大家感兴趣呢，也欢迎讲座后联系我们了解进一步的细节。那么像刚刚尚老师在讲座中也提到，我们刚刚举的这3个我们 iBridge 学院的例子，也都是尚老师进行了整个这个最后 committee review 的，所以它是其中我们说招生委员会评审的一个部分，我们是有2到3位前招生官来进行最后的审核和反馈，来确保最好的质量的一个提交。好的，那接下来我们看一下我们的暑期项目，还有一系列不同的方向，包括适合不同兴趣和发展路径的学生，有包括耶鲁大学法学院人文学科、历史、政治学科的这个科研项目，也有这个 STEM 方面 AI Robotics、AI Healthcare。这个还有 AI Robotics Lab 等等这些相应的科研项目，也欢迎大家来咨询我们。那对于我们的这个写作与竞赛项目、公共演讲和领导力以及整个申请季的大学申请材料的评估都可以来咨询我们。那好，我们接下来非常快的看一下我们再过2周，我们下一周会休息一下。再过2周，我们会有一场讲座，是6月14号推出这个夏季系列讲座的最后一场是讲这个关于心理健康与身体素质的培养 是由我们北京体育大学体能教练、中国田径协会的教练员讲师李教练与大家分享如何管理压力与实现长期的成长。我们也会是一个中英文的一个方式欢迎进入我们的讲座群，扫码了解更详细的信息。那接下来就是我们本场的 Q&A 的时间了，欢迎大家提问哈。Okay, now thank you so much for your patience. Now it's our Q&A time. I will read aloud some questions, but Shawn, you'll also pick some questions you would like to answer. Okay, so I have one question, like audience, James, he asked, students T shift from AP to IB at a late stage. Not sure why taking the challenge by choice. Will it affect the student's academic performance? I think you already talked about
I did, yeah.
Do you want to mention like very quickly in 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah, and just to repeat a little bit of what I was saying earlier, it almost doesn't matter in that particular case whether or not we know if the students switched from AP to IB. It's possible that that was the case. I don't recall, maybe someone else does. Or if it was just the mere mixing of the courses. And as I mentioned, at some high schools, if you're doing the International Baccalaureate, you can actually take advanced placement classes as a part of the trajectory, to doing the IB, whether that's just doing the IB in terms of particular courses, so really mixing the two curriculums, or if you're doing the International Baccalaureate Diploma program. I have seen students actually take, for example, multivariable calculus, which is not an AP course or an IB course, along with their higher levels, which they may not have chosen math at a higher level if they've already taken if they're already taking math at a higher level. Some students might be taking classes even outside of their high school. And so, yeah, there are lots of choices that you can make. Every high school's different, and you really do have to consider all of your options, the ones that will best support the growth of the particular student. Yes.
Okay, thank you. 那么对于英文的问题回答我就不翻译了。赵老师，你觉得呢？因为时间的有限，那么如果大家的问题是中文的，那我会用中文来回答哈。那我们第二个问题是来自 John Doe。These high-achieving success stories are inspiring, but what does this look like for a more typical middle-of-the-pack student? Showing a regular student's transformation will be incredibly powerful for the audience. And that's a very interesting feedback. And I would like to mention one thing. We did see some seemingly regular student at the early age, like 9th grade, 10th grade, like this just past admission season, we had a student, student Steven. So he liked STEM, but he tried math in 9th grade, all kinds of competition, but couldn't really won competitions. And he tried physics. He came to the summer school in the US, but he felt like he could not be very competitive in physics. However, he switched to the environmental science, and he did start his environmental community service in 9th grade, and he found out he can do much better in that area. Then he did also research program with the professor, and he felt that's his real passion. I mean, but finally he got into UChicago, and that's a great result. And he is not really really top student. He's ranked about like top 15, top 20 in his school. And his school, usually very few students could get into like top 15 schools. So that's one example I want to mention. But John, you're very welcome to come to us. I will be happy to share more like seemingly regular student. But even if they seems regular, like Shawn mentioned, the student has to meet the certain level of academic competitiveness, right? He has to have, especially for STEM student, he has to have competitive the SAT scores and of course other aspects, leadership, personality, that all matters. But Shawn, do you want to have some comments, but trying to make it short?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just add one thing. So yes, different students are at different levels. And what I've seen with the students that we've worked with is we consider those different levels and we make changes to the strategy for the student, the plan for the student, relative to how much time we have to make a difference for the student. And honestly, the thing that may change the most between students that are at the top of the class and those who are really good but not at the top, it's the college list. It's where they're applying. That's honestly what may change the most, because if SAT scores aren't at a certain level, grades aren't at a certain level, we've got to change the college list. Yeah.
赵老师有补充吗？
I think I read about that students in one of the webinars.
Yeah.
Maybe we can share with the students, more similar students. Yeah.
Okay. So we move to next one. So we have got a question from Connie 黄哈，那谢谢您的问题啊，你是用中文打的，所以我会来说中文。请问理科生主修医疗工程，应该一直在理科方面深耕，还是希望看到一些反差，报考 AP History、AP English 或参加一些写作项目？但这些可能并不擅长，会影响到 GPA。还有，请问11年级做 Bio Internship 重要的一点是去参加 STEM 方面的竞赛吗？我想说，因为我们今天时间有限，肯定不能够回答的特别的全面哈，非常欢迎您会后就加我们的微信或进入我们的讲座群，要跟我们的约一个免费的会议都是可以的。So Shawn, the question, but of course I can also add some comments. The question is for science or STEM student, if he or she would like to major in bioengineering. He should go much deeper in a STEM, or the admissions officer wants to see a little bit like more varieties, like the students will also take AP History, AP English, or attend some writing programs. I agree with that. Yes, that's a good strategy. But maybe he is not very good at it. It may affect his GPA or her GPA, and also are there other bio internship in 11th grade? Should he take or she take a STEM competition?
Okay, so that was a lot of questions. I'm going to first start out by saying that this student should absolutely have coursework in biology, chemistry, and physics, and mathematics, and physics for the purposes of engineering should be the areas that are most advanced. Let's just sort of start there. In terms of other areas that could be helpful or important, and this references back to an example, Julia, that you provided earlier about the student that discovered environmental science who didn't really know about it. Environmental science is chemistry, it's biology, it's real and it's significant. And so, taking classes outside of biology, chemistry, physics, and math are also important. Other science areas, and also too, like psychology could be an important area to be investigating, depending upon the particular interest with regard to STEM, to engineering, with regard to the particular interest in the bio space. And then I guess last I would say is I agree that, the most selective schools are going to want to see someone with STEM interest also demonstrate that they are strong across the board. An example of that, I think, is a place like Caltech. Caltech asks for, in Pasadena, California, they ask for a humanities teacher letter of recommendation from students that are applying to that school, 90% of them for STEM areas. So being strong across the board, being sort of diverse in your learning interest and in your achievements is equally as important as being deep in STEM and those areas that are adjacent to biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics.
Thank you。好的，好的，我也来总结翻译一下哈。首先，我想跟 Connie 说，因为我们时间有限，很难说的特别的完，就是说全面哈。那我挑几个关键的，就是尚老师也分享，我也非常认同，就是说，当然也和孩子的选校，你的选校名单有关哈。就是说，通常来说，你如果选这个生物工程这一类的，当然你的理科是需要有一定的深耕的，像数学呀这些。当然还有生物啊，这个物理啊，都是要学好的。那么在这个之外，其他相关的一些学科，比如他提到的，如果是医疗工程，可能和心理学啊、化学，对吧？这些也都是可以很好的去尝试的。那如果你们要冲刺最顶尖的大学，不管是说前15藤校啊，还有刚刚尚老师提到的 Caltech 在加州的，那么他们学校非常有特点的一个就是90%申请理科的学生。都是要求他们的人文学科的老师提供推荐信，所以看得出来，越顶尖的大学越注重，即使是理科学生，你也需要展现出你在人文学科的深度，包括英文。好的，谢谢问题。好，那我们接下来呢，看一下这个其他的问题。From Alice Young, I'm more science heavy than leadership heavy. How do I write a compelling essay? This is a very general question, so it could be hard to answer in a few sentences. So Alice, you're welcome to to contact us to find out more, more support. And Shawn, do you want to mention very, very briefly in 1 or 2 sentences?
Yes, I guess I would say to Alice, it's never too late, and if you're deep in STEM, I would consider any and every opportunity to move into a leadership in that area first and foremost, because it's likely that there are some possibilities for you in that way. If that is not possible, then refer back to our previous sort of suggestions, which is that the things you do during the summer, those activities, they suggest that you are a risk taker. You are someone who can challenge and appreciates challenging themselves. And that is in and of itself leadership. Leadership is not always by titles.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. So we got a few more questions, so we will answer very briefly. One audience also mentioned, okay, is it too late for 11th grade to hire a consultant? When is the most ideal time to start? And we want to mention from the the cases we share, like Lincoln, he started work with us, iBridge, since 9th grade. But student D and student T, they came to iBridge like 10th grade. So we also have a student who came to us 11th grade, like also Miss Zhao interviewed one of our students. Student J, she got into Yale University in English, but she came to us the 2nd semester of 11th grade. And she didn't have a lot of awards except writing awards. But there's still, of course, there were still a lot for her to do. I mean, when she came to us, but she actually did very well. And we are super happy about the result. Yeah. Ms. Zhao, do you want to mention a few?
Yeah, I think the counselors were really, I was surprised when I read her profile, like the transformation, between 11th grade until the admission, like when she got admitted, and she did so much impactful activities, which was really like, I think they were great, giving her suggestion, leading, guiding her to do more, to tie whatever she had done together with some impactful, activities. And I think that was really one thing that I noticed was very, that was great. Another thing I noticed was when she was established a writer, but she struggled all the way through her application, essay writing, and did multiple drafts with one of the counselors. And I think Shawn also reviewed her essay and profile. Yeah. So
我也用中文非常快的说一下哈，就是说并不是每一个学生找到我们的时候 profile 都特别强，或者是说在某一方面强，但可能还是有一些 gap， 有一些差距。像刚刚我们提到的这个例子是去年就是说11年级找到我们的时候，有一位同学，那么在我们的辅导之下，他是被耶鲁大学录取，是文学专业。在找到我们的时候，他主要集中的奖项是在写作方面，但在其他的方面并没有看起来哈，就 seemingly 并没有很突出。那么但是在我们和他的这个辅导的这个过程当中，他的进步非常大，然后在整个文书阶段，他的表现也是非常的就是能够经历，就是说非常多的一些 challenge， 但是会最后就克服了这一些，然后写出非常好的文书，然后也获得了很好的一个录取结果。我们这边还有非常多的这些例子哈，除了我刚刚提到的被芝加哥大学录取的，我们还有其他的学员，也欢迎大家来咨询我们。好 ，then Shawn, I think we have last 1 or 2 questions. One is if you have one tip for candidates for Cornell, the student's dream school, what would it be?
of course,
Wow.
he will be the best person, right?
Well, I would say for Cornell, maybe the one thing to share is that Cornell reads applications by major, and in a way that I believe is different than most other places. And so make sure you are authentically connected to the major that you select to apply to at Cornell University. You must also be authentically connected to Cornell. So think about that when you're making the choice about applying there.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have a question. Maybe we will only talk 2 more minutes and then we will we'll have to say goodbye. Can you please talk a little bit about weighted vs unweighted GPA? My school only provides weighted GPA on transcript. In that case, does unweighted GPA still matter if admissions officer recalculate somehow?
So, I mean, for those watching, for those listening, you actually have no control over, and in most cases won't know which schools recalculate GPAs and which ones do not, unless you ask them. I don't know of any applicant who's ever asked every single school that question, but I would say that here's what to know and what to remember. The weighted GPA is good because it's indicating how strong your courses, your curriculum and course selection is at your school. That's typically what a weighted GPA is delivering. If a school wants to see what your grades look like in the raw, meaning without the weighting, all they have to do is look at your transcript. Generally, the transcript shows grades sort of in their kind of, unweighted form, if you will. Generally, this is not always the case. Sometimes the weighted grade is all you see, but oftentimes you can see the unweighted grade on the transcript. That's how universities that actually recalculate the GPA using just the courses that matter to them. But I would say again, don't worry about that so much. Just get the strongest, highest grades you possibly can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we get us. So the students said, so we actually got many questions from students. I can see from the question. The student featured in the case studies all have outstanding academic records and test scores. What advice would you offer to students with more modest academic records who are striving to reach their full potential?
Well, if there's time, work harder. If there's time, think about ways that you can use your summers and use your weekends. Get an academic tutor if there's time to help you with physics or to help you get better at sort of a non-school subject or area of interest like music or art. There are lots of support mechanisms. Sometimes hiring a coach or a consultant is honestly a way that you can sort of get to where it is you want to be if you're having trouble getting there on your own. I mean, it's no different than hiring someone to help you out, with weightlifting at the gym. They're going to know more than you know, perhaps, but better, they're going to have a different perspective, point of view, and you'll be able to sort of use what they see and what they know, to sort of help you, have the student, to help the student really sort of grow, change, and get closer to becoming the person they'd like to see and be. So, yeah.
Okay. So we got one question from TWL. How about if the high school doesn't offer too many AP classes, only 4 to 5 AP classes can be taken during the 4 high school years? What can we do to show our academic strength?
That happens a lot. Usually, if there's a limitation on the number of higher level courses that can be taken at the high school in a given year, it says that in the school profile. And so the university's reading applications will know that there are limitations. Oftentimes the counselor letter will indicate, well, not often, but sometimes it will indicate if there are limitations in the number of courses that can be taken at a certain level during a given year. To sort of go beyond that, use your summers, use online courses. There are students that are doing Stanford online math, sometimes because they have to, but sometimes because they want to. Coursera, MOOCs. There are lots of ways for you to kind of get where you're going in spite of the roadblocks and, the sort of like things you can't do. There are lots of many more things that you can do, and it may just be that you don't know about them. And so that's why that other perspective and, someone that knows a little bit more can be so helpful.
Thank you so much. Now is our last question for today's webinar. With the arrival of the AI era, what skills and abilities do colleges value most in students? I think that's a wonderful question to end.
I'm glad you chose that one, because I was hoping you were going to choose that one, because that was going to be the one I was going to choose. So here's the thing with AI. AI has always been here. I mean, it's been, at least for the last decade, it's been here, probably longer. It's now a more sort of it's more present in the in the university admissions process, in different ways at different institutions and across different countries and platforms. And so what you should remember is that universities don't want to see AI applying to their institutions. They want to read from, learn about real people doing real things that matter to those individuals. And so I would say, as far as the writing is concerned, because that's the area where AI is sort of can be the most damaging, but also it's the most sort of like I don't know, you can be opportunistic and see it as, I can really get some help there. Universities reading applications, they've come to sort of know what AI writing or AI, sort of in heavily AI influenced writing looks like. And so avoid that. Use what you already have, your voice, your experiences, your intuition, your knowledge. Let that sort of be the thing that guides your writing, your storytelling, which is why you must know yourself. This process is about self-discovery at its core, at the foundation. If you haven't done that work, you're not going to be able to write well about yourself, about the things you want, you care about, you want to study. And so avoid using AI to do that for you. The other thing to think about too is AI is a shared tool. And the more you use AI, the more you sound like other people. And universities will start to see patterns, because AI is about patterns. So universities will also, and they already have and already are, seeing those patterns between students. They're not choosing those students. They're choosing the students that are clearly aware of their uniquenesses and that are really focused on enhancing and embellishing and broadening who they are.
Excellent, thank you so much. Miss Zhao, 你觉得最后一个问题想很快的总结一下吗？因为我觉得有一些可能听中文的家长听一下。
好的。 像刚才的所说的是 AI，我觉得有一点我特别同意，而且我也写下来，就是说2点吧。第一点就是说，真正的实际上 AI 实际上一直存在的。那么现在呢，实际上university 他们需要看到的是 real people，而不是 AI。看到的是真正的你能做些什么，在这个校园里，甚至走出校园里，你能为这个社会来做些什么。另外就是说，在整个招生官，他们已经慢慢的看到了这个整个的这个 pattern。我们这个经常会，如果你经常用 AI 的话，那你就会失去你自己的声音你自己的声音，你自己最真实的声音实际上是你的独一无二的，这个一定要保留，而不能在这个整个过程中把这件事情交给 AI 去完成。而且我觉得上有一点说的特别好，整个大学申请的过程，因为我自己作为这个是一老二了，明年会申请，我已经有一个经历了一次，是整个是一个真的是一个自我探索、自我发现的一个过程。这个过程其实是挺痛苦的，我记得我女儿哭了好多次。整个写作的过程中 ，the essay writing was not easy, but when you done it, you will learn a lot about yourself. I think that's what I want to say. And thank you so much, Shawn. I learned so much from you and your sharing, and I will share all this knowledge to, with the parents that I know. Thank you.
也非常感谢张老师。Thank you so much, Shawn. And I would also like to thank you, all the audience, who attended today's webinar. 感谢今天大家的参与。我们今天的讲座呢，在现在也要跟大家说再见了，也期待在下一场讲座见到大家。有任何的问题，请联系我们。Thank you, Shawn and Miss Zhao, and everybody. Hope you have a great evening or good night or good morning. Okay.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.